What's up, everybody? Good people of the world, good people of SOCHH. We're going to talk about SOCHH as an academic model. And why it's a hybrid, why it's not a private school, why it's not a charter school, why we're not even considered a micro school. And yeah, let's get into it. So, essentially, when we started, we were a co-op, and I had always known that I wanted the kids with a California credentialed teacher and working within a peer-to-peer collaboration model, meaning that they had peers to work alongside, work with, learn from, and to learn sort of the order of how a traditional classroom or traditional setting would work. Now, definitely arguable, definitely debatable. There's definitely a lot of research that shows, even though we have no institutions that currently follow any of the research, but it's very clear that allowing kids a lot more unstructured free time, allowing kids to sort of child-led learning has a hugely beneficial and significant role in their cognitive development and their emotional regulation. And that is, to me, non-debatable. However, what is debatable is the practicality of that, right? So when we say, look at the model of Finland and how they do school, they don't start formal education until they're 7 years old. They have twice the amount of outdoor time as the US has. They have, their high schoolers are much more involved in extracurriculars and apprenticeship type of opportunities. I mean, the reality is that, one, it's an entire population of 2 million people, and that is, there are more people in all of Southern California than there is in the entire country of Finland. Two, it has a political and cultural structure that completely supports that, right? So you have paid maternity and paternity leave, you have they pay, all of education is free. They pay, government pays for teachers to get up to their master's degree, and they have just a much more heavily invested federal amount of dollars into their academic system. So when you have that, of course you can have that kind of model. We don't have that in the US, right? So it doesn't matter what the PISA score is. And if you don't know what the PISA score is, it's the international standings of where we are academically in the world. Finland and South Korea are constantly 1 and 2, and they've been competing against each other for that 1 and 2 spot for 8-10 years. The US is constantly between 23 and 50. It has never really risen above the top 20. So when you look at that, you have to say, okay, well, the US is doing something wrong. Well, the problem is that we know we're doing something wrong, but we don't have the funding or the federal backing or the political or cultural acumen to make changes. And when I talk to people, they instantly assume I'm anti-public school. I am not. And I think it's important that we give credit where credit is due. Public school teachers and public schools are doing a phenomenal job within their limitations. That's a really key, important part, because they're trying to be all to everyone all of the time, and that is literally impossible. You have to remember that just because we live in one area, that's not how state laws are made. That's not how federal regulations and laws are made. They are trying to take into account the totality of the entire country, right? So there's a big difference between a very rural public school in Montana and a very tightly impacted urban school in Chicago. And yet, we still hold baseline standards for both advantage. Now, that's not the teacher's fault. That's not the kid's fault. That's not the fault of the baseline structures that we've put into place. It just is what it is. It's terrible. It sucks. It creates a lot of unbalance, and it creates a lot of contention amongst parents. So all of that is to say, when you look at how the public school is designed, it's not it's successful with 60% of its population, of its students. Well, if you're, if that's like an investment, if that's like a stock, you're going to be like, that's a pretty good performance, right? Even if 40% aren't happy. And that other 40% is comprised of two different populations of people. It is comprised of people who have an IEP or a 504, and something that we'll get into at a much later date time is how the entire system of an IEP and a 504 actually work versus how people think that they work, and how they continuously are failing students, and that's actually not the fault of the actual IEP and 504 program. It's the fault of the language and the quote unquote marketing around what an IEP is, and people think it is for one thing and that's actually not what it's for. So I'll get into that some other time. But the point being, so you have this 40% that is failing, half, maybe a little more than half are IEP and 504s, and the other half are students who really are like SOCHH model kids. Like, they are the students who fall in the lowest 10% of the class. That has nothing to do with their intelligence. It has everything to do with a large class size, the way that they learn, and how they function, focus, and pay attention in a large class size, in a class where week after week, month after month, you are expected to jump from along this sort of like linear pattern. You go A, B, C, D, right? There's no room for you to get to D in your lesson or your unit and be like, I really am struggling because I'm not sure I even had a hold of B. Can we go back? There's no room for that in the public school system. And that is exactly what SOCHH is modeled for. We don't push kids too far ahead, although it is a little bit of like reaching forward and pulling back at the same time, until we feel like they have really found the point where they can grasp and master the fundamentals. Now, that being said, because that is how the SOCHH model works, and that does not work in the public school setting, I forgot what I was gonna say. Doesn't matter. The point is that those kids are the other half of that equation that are kind of being left behind, because that's not how public school is set up. So when we started, I knew that this is the population that we were serving, and I've always had clarity on the intention and where we're going, although year after year the specifications and how that works begins to be tweaked and looks a little bit different, a little bit better. We get a little bit better year after year. Okay, where were we? So when SOCHH started, that I knew that where we were, I had like a whisper of a vision, and that is where I was going towards. And I should backtrack a little bit here. At the time, there was only a few things available for homeschooling. You homeschooled on your own, or you homeschooled through a learning center that was like a la carte style classes, or you could homeschool through a hybrid that was religious based. Well, I knew right away I wanted a secular program for a wide variety of reasons. First of all, we're not religious. Second of all, because it wasn't offered. And third, because the programs that are religious based are very clear that they are religious teachings first, nothing wrong with that, academics or electives second, And so I really had not run into a program, and still there's 2 programs that are around that people will bring to me, and if they want my honest opinion, I'll be happy to give it to them, that in my opinion, they don't prepare the student to immerse themselves back into a public academic setting if that is what is necessary and needed. So if you go through a religious hybrid of what is currently offered, it's not very academically based, which again, it's fine as long as you know that and that's your intention and that's your goal for you and your kids. And then the hybrid the homeschool learning centers, the a la carte classes, again, they're awesome, but you have no cohesiveness, no consistency all the way through. You're going to have multiple teachers and multiple curriculum, multiple books, multiple syllabuses to follow. However, the intention behind those homeschool learning centers that are a la carte is not to recreate a campus type of environment for your student. It's really to support the homeschooling family who are kitchen table homeschoolers. They want to teach 1 or 2 of the academic subjects, or something really creative, or maybe you have a business and you really want to immerse your kids into it. And so these were intended as these little a la carte classes that if you're like, I really don't want to teach science, that you could enroll them in a science class or a sewing class. And the intention behind that was that it's just allowing for you to bolster your community, your academics, but not to become the primary teacher. And I knew that what I wanted was the opposite. I knew that what I wanted was a hybrid program that, for a lot of reasons, I'll get to that in a second, that was secular, that did do the heavy lifting on the academics. And I know that when we started, it was very unpopular because there was a lot of skepticism and doubt as to what you could actually accomplish in a 3-day program. And I mean, trust, if Mrs. Vos ever wants to reveal all my insecure text messages to the world, on year 2 and 3, my stress levels of how do I collect data to show student improvement and progress, and can we actually do this? We hadn't done it. This hasn't been done before. But everything in my gut told me that if I took a classroom of 30 kids or 26 kids and I cut it in half, and I gave those kids a relationship with their teacher, and that teacher got to know the way that they learn and how to help curate to them. And I shouldn't say curate or cater, because that's more one-on-one tutoring. They could lean into, I should say, what each individual student needs. Your buy-in from the kids goes way up. Their output goes way up, and their disinterest and their lack of confidence, it just disappears, and the behaviors, all of that just sort of disappears. And I knew that in my gut to be true, but I also knew just to be true that in order to get that, you had to have this downtime for them. And we have played with the idea of a 5-day program that only goes till 12, but what happens is you kind of have a rhythm to your day. You kind of have to get going into the day, and if you have to stop at 12 every day or stop at 1 every day and you disperse for the day and you come back the next day, it really interrupts the rhythm. But on top of that, we wanted these students and these families to be able to experience other homeschooling endeavors, or field trip days with the family, or museum days, or vacations. And so that was also just as important to us, is that can this be successful? Can we get through whatever percentage of a normal academic year in a 3-day program? And we're going into year 6, and overwhelmingly, we in each classroom, we are hitting about 90% of the regular school year academically. That is about what we're able to fit in. And in some years, depending on the makeup of the students in that classroom, we're able to get a lot more. Like they cover their whole grade and then they keep going forward into another grade. Like that it's incredible to watch, and it depends on the students. But more importantly, what it does is it takes those kids, that other 10% of the lowest standards, of it takes the students that are the lowest performing students in a public school, and all of a sudden it gives them equal footing to perform. And when they are allowed that equal footing to perform, they perform. And the amount we can get out of them is mind-blowing. And so that all plays a role in what we are trying to do here and what we're trying to accomplish, is that we want it to be a hybrid. It's intentional. We want it to stay small class sizes. It's intentional. But we want it to be academic. We want it to be state standards. We want to follow Common Core. And the reason being, not that Common Core is the best. No. Would I love to be a program like Finland? Absolutely. But the difference is, we have families who are going back into public school, and the reality is that 80% of all homeschoolers drop off in 8th grade and go back into public high school, and that's because of the A to G standards that are needed to graduate from high school in California and to go into any California community college, to go into any UC or Cal State. Now, that doesn't mean there's not homeschooling programs for high school. It just means that a lot of those kids are going to be taking a different route to get into UCs, Cal States, or community colleges. And a lot of them, there are actual colleges, like small private universities all over the country as well as abroad, that really love having homeschoolers there. So it just depends on what your goals are for your kids. It's why I really encourage families, you need to start looking now, wherever you are, 1st grade, kindergarten, incoming kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade. Well, geez, if you're 8th grade, 5th grade for sure is like, you gotta start looking at where are your long-term goals. Because you don't know what it is that you don't know. That's really the reality. Does it mean, oh, I have to get on a waiting list for something in kindergarten for 8th grade? Probably not. I have always known 3 huge fundamental things for my family. Number 1, in the state of California, you can concurrently enroll in community college, and you can do dual enrollment, which are different, slightly different, for your high school student. And before they turn 18, it's 100% free. The moment I knew that that was a possibility, to me, that is what my kids are doing. They will concurrently enroll with their public high school and the community college. That was the first thing. The second thing was knowing what was needed for AP and honors classes. While I have one student who was not kindergarten ready, and that's nothing to do with that student's intelligence at all. It's just that student's learning style. I have another student who is a perfect public school brain. That student of mine taught themselves to read in preschool. And that student has now skipped a grade. And that student has very big ambitions to truly graduate from high school a year or 2 early, and to go into community college and transfer to a very specific school for a very specific degree. That student is very ambitious, and I've known this all along. So for me, what I had to know is, how do I support this? I started looking when all my kids were kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade years, and knowing what I needed to get them into AP classes if that was going to be a situation they were going to go into. And part of that journey is knowing, how do you get a homeschooler into a high school AP class? Because those AP classes the freshman year are stacked based off of 7th grade math and literature scores, to where they then move them into honors in middle school, 7th and 8th grade, and then they have a sure track in, as long as they pass blah, 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 I want to say it's the SLAT, but that is not right. Whatever, there's a specific AP incoming entrance AP class, and that's going to drive me crazy that I can't remember the name. Doesn't matter. So I am now at a crossroads as a parent about how serious is my student with this, because if they are, SOCHH is not going to cut it. I have to be very realistic with that, and I have to consider putting them into public middle school so that they can get into those honors classes, so that they can get into those freshman year honors and AP classes, because this student has ambitions to have a 5.0. You cannot get a 5.0 if you do not have AP and honors classes right from the get-go. Now, the other parenting side of me is like, whoa, that's too much pressure. But I do have a student who's very ambitious that way, and I do have to know all that information before I get to like January of my kid's 8th grade year. And now I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's not even an option anymore to enroll them in that way. So it's just a way for me to encourage you that whether it's SOCHH that you're going to go to, whatever program, that you start thinking 2 steps beyond, just so you have the knowledge, just so you have the information of where am I going with this? What's this going to look like? And so part of that is SOCHH is not a private school, and SOCHH is not a charter school, because as we looked down those roads, the reality is by turning us into a private school or turning us into a charter school, we would have to follow the same structure that the California Department of Ed puts on private schools, public schools, and charter schools. And that would mean that we cannot differentiate anymore. That would mean we cannot move people quickly ahead and behind and hold them back. It would mean we can't just quickly offer accommodations and modifications for them to utilize those accommodations and modifications to grasp the concepts first and then sort of work backwards on those smaller skill sets. And so, because those are all part of SAI, SPED, IEP programs, and you're not really supposed to do them if you are any kind of public or charter. There's a lot of implications to doing that. As a learning center, we can do all of those things. And there is, of course, always worry that the California State Legislature will pass more rigorous guidelines or laws regarding learning centers and what they can and can't do. And so we are vigilant of that, and I do try to be cognizant of that. I do follow the California State Legislature, and there are you kind of have to work within the system that is handed down. And so that is how SOCHH is what it is. So and in that vein, it's not a one-to-one. It's not an equal to the counterpart at the public school system, especially kindergarten, because it's play-based. You're not going to find play-based kindergarten in a public program or a private program. First grade here is really more like kindergarten. So I hope kindergarten parents say, well, will they be ready for public first grade? No, they will not. Doesn't mean that you at home on those off days can't start to prepare them, but that's not what we do. First grade going into second grade is a little bit more comparable and comparable. And then second grade going into third, that is really where we say you could probably pick any third grader up from SOCHH and put them in public, and they would feel like it was the same thing. And then what happens is there's another change between around sixth grade. And then we don't look anything like a public middle school. We focus so rigorously on writing skills and math skills, and that doesn't mean to say we're trying to get them ahead in math. It's that we're trying to nail down their fundamentals so well that there's such a smooth transition as they move forward. And it's to say that a big part of what we do in middle school is working on social and emotional organization, self-advocacy, and really helping them learn how to set goals and to follow structure, that they know how to look at any syllabus or look at any piece of information that's being given to them and organize it and execute it. Because we work on that for 3 years, the kids who leave here are outpacing their counterparts in a middle school and in a high school because they know how to do that part. Even if the content feels off or I haven't learned this, they have the skill set to say, Mr. So-and-so and Miss So-and-so, can I come to your office hours? Can I get help from this? We have them email us here at SOCHH. Miss Natalie, can you look at this? This is what I was sent. Can you tell me what I should be doing? Well, I'm not their teacher. So my first piece of advice is I want you to take this email. I want you to send it to your teacher. Second of all, let me look at it and then let me help you structure it. But the fact that they can verbalize that puts them far ahead, far ahead of their counterparts. And you add on top of this the fact that they haven't had the pressure and the social anxiety for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They have more confidence than kids that are their counterparts. So there is a big jump here from 5th to 6th grade. We do push harder. We want them to be excellent writers. We want them to be such proficient, excellent writers, both in creative writing and in research writing, informative writing, compare and contrast essays, that it's natural for them, that they don't hesitate, that now all they have to do is organize their content to put it into a flow that they're already so familiar with. And I would say our current 7th graders that are going into 8th grade right now and starting the 2023 school year are writing at least a sophomore level, maybe a junior level of high school. That's how good their writing is. That's how much pressure we put on them for writing. Pressure, yeah, I guess. We do it again and again, and we correct and we send it back, and we want they know that. They all roll their eyes when it's another essay, and that yet when we show them their beginning of the year essays to their end of the year essays, it's like night and day, and they're just like blown out of the water. That all being said, I think the other thing that I wanted to say was, because of this transition from 6th grade to 7th and 8th grade here, the other thing we are really encouraging of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders is to not get stuck into this mentality of something is easier and something is harder. So for example, we have had students leave here. They go to public and they say, my public school is so easy. They're doing stuff that we did a year ago, 2 years ago. True, probably. However, what I encourage them is to not fall into that slippery slope of feeling like it's so easy that they are coasting by, because you can always dig deeper. You can always give your best plus, and always ask for your teachers to let them know, say, is there something else that I could be working on that can improve my grade or my skill set? So we do try to work that angle as well. So all of that to say, SOCHH isn't exactly, it's not a substitute. It's not like an exact one-to-one of what you're going to get in another school setting.
I realized when I was editing this that my video cut off. The point that I was trying to make in this video was that as a learning center, we have a lot more flexibility than a public or private or traditional school has. As a hybrid model, we also can work within the expectations of the academic expectations of what your students will receive if and when they do go into the traditional school model, be it in another elementary or a high school or a college setting. And the benefit of being a learning center is our ability to be flexible and work both forwards and backwards and adjust year to year for our students. And that's why we're the model that we are.